Hello, my little love. Did you have a good day today? I hope something made you smile. Now take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and let your mind get soft and quiet. It's time for a gentle bedtime story. Once upon a time, in a village nestled at the foot of a mountain covered in pine trees, there lived a kind woodcutter and his gentle wife. They had a small cottage with a garden where vegetables grew in neat rows, and flowers nodded their colorful heads in the breeze. The woodcutter worked hard each day, walking up the mountain path to gather firewood, and his wife tended their home with loving care. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that made them happy. One warm summer afternoon, the woodcutter was walking along a forest path he knew well, carrying his axe over his shoulder and humming a quiet tune. The sunlight filtered through the leaves above, making patterns of gold and green that danced on the ground. Birds sang their peaceful songs, and the air smelled of pine needles and wildflowers. As he walked, the woodcutter heard a sound that didn't belong in the forest, a soft crying, like someone very sad and alone. He stopped and listened carefully, turning his head this way and that. The crying seemed to be coming from behind a large rock covered in soft moss. The woodcutter set down his axe gently and walked toward the sound. There, sitting on the ground with tears rolling down his cheeks, was a little boy who looked no more than 7 years old. But there was something unusual about this child. His clothes shimmered slightly in the dappled sunlight, and his eyes had a brightness that seemed almost magical. The woodcutter's kind heart went out to him immediately. "Why are you crying, little one?" the woodcutter asked softly, kneeling down so he wouldn't seem so tall and frightening. "Are you lost?" The little boy looked up and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm not a regular boy," he said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes tinkling. "I'm a mountain spirit, and I've lost something very precious to me. 2 special fans that belong to my family. Without them, I cannot return home." The woodcutter felt sympathy fill his heart like warm honey. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I know these woods very well. Let's look for your fans together." And so they did, walking slowly through the forest, looking under bushes with berries, behind trees with thick trunks, and along the babbling stream that wound its way down the mountain. The afternoon sun moved across the sky, painting everything in softer, warmer colors. Finally, just as the sun was beginning to think about setting, the woodcutter spotted something colorful tucked beneath some ferns. "There," he said, pointing carefully. The little spirit boy ran over and let out a happy cry. "You found them! You found them!" He picked up 2 beautiful fans, one as red as summer roses, the other as blue as the clearest sky. They were decorated with delicate paintings of clouds and birds and seemed to glow with a gentle inner light. "Thank you," the boy said, his whole face shining with joy and relief. "You have been so kind to me, even though you didn't know who I was. Because of your good heart, I want to give you a gift." He held out the 2 fans, one in each hand. "The red fan has special magic," he explained. "When you wave it, things will grow bigger. The blue fan also has magic. When you wave it, things will grow smaller. Use them wisely, and they will help you when you need it most." The woodcutter accepted the fans with gratitude and wonder, thanking the spirit boy over and over. The boy smiled, bowed respectfully, and then seemed to shimmer and fade like mist in the morning sun, disappearing back to his home in the mountain. The woodcutter stood there for a moment, looking at the beautiful fans in his hands, hardly believing what had just happened. When he returned home that evening, the sky was painted in shades of pink and purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear. His wife was waiting for him at their cottage door, and when he showed her the magical fans and told her about the spirit boy, her eyes grew wide with amazement. "How wonderful," she said softly. "And what a kind thing you did, helping someone in need." They decided to keep the fans safe and use them only when truly necessary. Days passed peacefully, with the woodcutter going to work each morning and returning each evening, and his wife tending their little home and garden. The fans sat carefully wrapped in silk cloth in a special box, waiting. Then one day, something happened that would test the gift the woodcutter had received. A wealthy nobleman who lived in a great house on the other side of the village had a daughter who was spoiled and thoughtless. She had grown up with everything she ever wanted and had never learned to think about others or to be grateful for what she had. Her nose was always pointed up in the air, and she often said unkind things to people who had less than she did. One afternoon, this nobleman's daughter was walking through the village with her servants following behind her, carrying her parasol and her packages. She happened to pass by the woodcutter's modest cottage and saw the woodcutter's wife working in the garden. Her hands dirty from planting seeds, her face peaceful and content. The nobleman's daughter stopped and laughed in a way that wasn't nice at all. "Look at that tiny house," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "It's so small, it's hardly bigger than a chicken coop. How can anyone live in such a cramped little place?" The woodcutter's wife looked up, her feelings hurt by the cruel words, but she said nothing. She had been taught that kindness was more important than pride. That evening, when the woodcutter came home and his wife told him what had happened, he felt sad that someone could be so thoughtless. But then he remembered the red fan. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "it's time to teach a gentle lesson about kindness and gratitude." The next day, the woodcutter walked to the nobleman's grand house. It was indeed impressive, with tall pillars and many windows that sparkled in the sunlight, surrounded by gardens much larger than his own. He found the nobleman's daughter sitting on a bench beneath a willow tree, looking bored and dissatisfied despite all her luxury. The woodcutter approached respectfully and asked if she would like to see something magical. The girl, curious despite herself, agreed. The woodcutter took out the red fan and began to wave it gently toward the girl's nose. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But then, slowly and steadily, the girl's nose began to grow. It stretched out longer and longer, not quickly or painfully, but gradually, like a plant growing in time-lapse. The nobleman's daughter touched her nose and felt it extending. She ran to look at her reflection in the water of a nearby pond and gasped. Her nose now stretched out nearly 2 feet in front of her face, looking quite ridiculous. She couldn't hide behind her hands. She couldn't turn her head without her long nose bumping into things. Tears began to fill her eyes, not mean tears this time, but tears of understanding and embarrassment. "Please," she said to the woodcutter, her voice much humbler than before. "Please help me. I'm sorry for what I said about your house. I was unkind and thoughtless." The woodcutter looked at her gently. Do you truly understand? He asked. Do you see now that it's not the size of someone's home that matters, but the size of their heart? The girl nodded, and for the first time in her life, she felt genuine regret for her actions. I understand, she whispered. I've been cruel and I'm sorry. The woodcutter nodded and took out the blue fan. He waved it carefully toward her nose, and it began to shrink, returning slowly to its normal size. But he stopped just before it was all the way back. Remember this feeling, he said kindly. Remember what it's like to be embarrassed, to need help from others. Let it teach you to be gentle with everyone you meet. The girl promised that she would, and the woodcutter waved the fan one more time, returning her nose to exactly as it had been before. Something changed in the nobleman's daughter that day. She began to notice the people around her, really notice them. She saw the servants who worked hard to keep her home beautiful, the gardeners who tended the flowers, the cooks who prepared her meals. She started to say thank you. She started to smile at people instead of looking down on them. She even visited the woodcutter's cottage to apologize properly to his wife, bringing a basket of fresh fruit as a gift. Word of the magical fans began to spread through the village, though, and not everyone who heard about them had good intentions. There was a greedy merchant who thought he could use the red fan to make his bags of grain bigger and sell them for more money. There was a vain woman who wanted to make her jewels larger. But the woodcutter kept the fans hidden and safe, using them only to teach gentle lessons to those who needed to learn about kindness and humility. Years passed like water flowing in a stream, smooth and steady. The woodcutter and his wife grew older, their hair turning silver like moonlight, their faces gaining lines that came from years of smiling. They never became rich or famous, but they had something more valuable than gold. They had peace in their hearts, love in their home, and the knowledge that they had used their magical gift wisely and well. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the stars came out and the crickets sang their nighttime songs, the woodcutter would take out the two fans and look at them, remembering the day he helped a crying spirit boy in the forest. He would think about all the lessons the fans had helped teach, lessons about kindness and humility, about seeing beyond appearances, about treating everyone with respect, no matter how much or how little they had. The nobleman's daughter, now grown into a thoughtful and kind woman, would sometimes visit the cottage, bringing small gifts and sitting in the garden to talk with the woodcutter and his wife. She never forgot the lesson of that day, and she taught her own children to always be kind to others, to never judge people by their possessions or their homes, and to remember that true beauty comes from a generous heart. And what happened to the magical fans? The woodcutter eventually returned them to the mountain, leaving them at the spot where he had first found the spirit boy crying. He knew that magical things belonged to magical places, and that he and his wife had everything they needed without them. The fans disappeared in a shimmer of light, presumably back to their home with the mountain spirits, their work in the human world complete. But the lessons they taught remained, passed down through stories told by grandparents to grandchildren on cozy nights, reminding everyone who heard them that kindness is its own magic, more powerful and lasting than any enchanted fan could ever be. The woodcutter and his wife lived out their days in their small cottage, which never seemed cramped or tiny to them, but always felt just right, filled with love and laughter and the warm glow of a life lived with compassion. And sometimes, when the wind blew through the pine trees on the mountain, people said they could hear a sound like a child's laughter. Happy and free, and they knew the mountain spirits were pleased. You did well today, my little love. Now let your eyes grow heavy, and let the night wrap around you like a soft blanket. Sleep well, sweet dreams, and rest deeply.